Welcome back to Living with a Classic and part 2 of replacing the cam cover gaskets on the Jaguar V12. If you haven't seen part 1, I put a link to it down below so you can check that out. But basically in part 1, we removed everything so you can get to the cam covers. There's quite a bit of stuff to remove. Now all that is done, they're very easy to access to. I have them both off and we can have a look at them. I'll clean them off and we'll put them back on and hopefully we'll have no more leaks. Since the last video, I've been doing more disassembly and a lot of cleaning. I took that cam cover off as well, cleaned it off, and I've already put that one back on off camera. I thought we'd do this side together. Other than that, I have made sure I can get all the spark plugs out because I'm changing them out while I'm at it. Also removed the distributor cap and a few other things. Got the AC compressor loose because that pipe there is in the way to get that cam cover off easily. Also the hose over there for the heater is sort of in the way, but if you loosen this and lay it to the side, you can sort of get it out. And I've degreased these and wiped them off so they look nice and presentable. Haven't painted them or anything, but they look pretty nice for being original, and I think they suit the look of the car. Also, of course, once again, it's not my car, it's a customer car, but I always want to clean things off and make them look as nice as I can. So onto this side, and of course it's been an open engine, so I've had it covered. So I will uncover it here. We'll clean off the gasket area. I think I've already done that, but just wipe it down one more time. Then we'll go over to the bench. I will show you what I like to do with these gaskets to get them to seal nicely. Put this on, and then we'll move on to fitting more things onto the engine. Like most jobs, in order to get this to be oil tight, preparation is key. And in case of the Jaguar V12, you really want these oil tight, like on any engine. But the thing is, there's so much to remove, like we saw in the previous video, that you want to get it right the first time. For instance, the XK engine or the later AJ6 engines, it's very easy to remove these. And so if you don't get it right, it's not the end of the world. You can redo it quickly. There are of course many ways of doing it, so this is my way. First, I've gotten rid of all of the gasket on here, all the old gasket. It's very brittle, most likely original, and most of it I could just get off my fingers, and I collected it and moved it off, and most of it sort of looks like this, very brittle stuff. Whatever is left, in some areas, like there was a little bit left over here, I use, very carefully, I use a razor blade. I don't cut into it, and I lay it down flat. If there's a big area, you can lay it down flat to sort of get it off, or you can drag it across, and then you won't, put any marks into the aluminum, and you will get it off. The easiest way to check that there's nothing left is when just pull your finger across it. So even if you can maybe see some marks there, it's completely flat. So I pull my finger across everywhere, being a little bit careful because the edges are actually sharp here, making sure that everything is completely uniform and that there are no old gaskets left. Nothing like that. Don't forget about here in the back where the half moon seals go. There is usually some old remnants of some sealant on there. Get rid of that, make sure that's nice and smooth. And then you need to wipe it clean. Make sure it's free of any oils or anything like that as much as you can. I mean, it's of course not the easiest. Once again, this is my way of doing it. I like to use acetone just because it cleans it very well and it also evaporates, which means it will not leave a residue on the area. So I take a shop rag with some acetone and I'm just wiping across here, and I like to move all the wires just to the side so I don't get caught on anything when I put this together again. So I will continue over here, also down where the half moon seal goes over here. We'll let this sit so it evaporates, and while we do that, we can prepare the gasket on the cam cover. Here we have the cam cover for the other side. One thing that is good to know, but it's very obvious when you take these off, these are not the same length. The one on the other bank is longer than this one, and you'll notice that when you get the gaskets. I like to get these. I'll see if I can put down in the description which ones they are, but they are the ones that are a little more expensive and a little thicker, and they do work really well. So when you're going for gaskets for these engines, don't get the cheap ones, get the ones that are a little bit better. And the one other thing I like to use is Hylimer Blue, which is excellent stuff. It really does help get these engines to be oil tight, and if you use this and these gaskets, these can be oil tight. I just follow the instructions on here, which are a little bit hard to see, but basically you put a little bit on both sides, smear it out, and you let the solvent in here evaporate, sort of almost like a contact adhesive, and then you put it all back together. You also need one of these, which is a half moon seals in the back, and I like to put some on there as well, just to make sure that they seal. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'll put some Hylimer on there. I'll let it, flash off so the adhesive goes on. We'll push that into place. While I'm doing that, we'll put the gasket on here, and then we're ready to put it all onto the car. So I like to start by grabbing the gasket, just make sure that's the correct length. Like I said, there are two different ones, and if you order, you should get two different ones, but you never know what happens, so make sure it's the correct one. This one fits very nicely. I will just lay this to the side for now, and then I like to get the Hylimer Blue. So I'm going to start with the half moon seals, and let's see, I just used this tube yesterday to do the other side, so maybe there's a slight blockage in there. Let me just get that out. There we go. And once again, you don't want too much, but a pretty good amount like this is fine. And we will set that to the side so that can sort of flash off, and then we'll push that onto the block in a little bit. And then I just like to lay a basic bead. Once again, this is just what I like to do. You might have something else that you like to use more. By all means, use that. But I think Hylimer Blue works very well. You don't need very much, but it's good to have on here. There we go. And then you can use what you want. I like to just use my finger to smear this out a sort of even manner. And it's very fluid when you're doing it, and then once the solvent in there sort of goes away, it becomes a little more sticky. But this stuff never really becomes rock hard, so it's not going to crack and give you leaks. And I've taken couple of these off on other cars with where I've used Hylimer, where I've had to get into the cams or the valves again. And the nice thing is you can usually actually reuse the gasket, because this stuff really doesn't glue it down like some of these sort of silicone sealants do. So that is a nice thing. And I like to go around these holes as well. And of course I will take a little bit of rag just to make sure that none is on the inside, but I haven't used that much, so it should not be an issue. Alright, I'm going to wait a couple of minutes now for this to sort of flash off. You can tell it gets a little bit more sticky once that's happened, and then we'll move on to the next step. Just one thing I did forget to mention, I have of course cleaned this off like I did with I like acetone. I also used a little bit in here just because there's a small buildup of, I wouldn't really call it sludge, but old oil in here. And this is an almost 30-year-old car, so that's completely normal. So I just wiped off any of it that came off, just to have it a little nicer around the inside. But let's let this flash off now, and this actually almost has. You can see it goes from being shiny to being more of a matte finish. So I would go and put this onto the engine block, or the head I mean, and then when I've done that, I think we'll be ready to put the gasket on here. Right down there in the back is where the half moon seal goes, so we'll just push that into place now. And don't need to push it too hard, just enough. And I can feel that I haven't had an excessive amount of the Hylimer being pushed out, so that's really good. Let that sit there, and then we'll go back over and put on the gasket. This stuff has, let's say, flashed off now, so you're ready to get the gasket on there. And that way up. And I'm just going to stick it down over the holes and make sure it's pretty centered and push it on. When you're doing the cam cover on the other side, it sort of depends how much of your car is taken apart. If you're in this case where all the coolant hoses are still there, like I mentioned before, it can be quite tight to then get this cam cover on. So then I recommend putting the gasket on the head instead, just so you don't knock it over when you try and get this on. But when doing this side, I like to do it this way. So now I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to lay a slight bead on here, wipe it down, let that get, flash off like I said, so it sticks down, and then we'll put it over on the car. While I've been waiting for this to flash off, I did get these and wipe them off. These are the original hardware, which is all covered in oil and nasty. I let it sit for a couple hours in the solution in my parts cleaner. Came out very nice. Definitely doesn't look new or anything, but it will look a lot nicer than before. If you don't have a parts cleaner or any of that solution, the same solvent that you use to clean anything off, you can just put that in a little old jam jar or a honey jar or something. Put this in there, let that soak for half an hour or so, and it'll come out this nice if you clean them off a bit. So I'll lay that bead now, and then we'll move over to the engine and get this installed. It's a couple minutes later, and now it's time to get this back onto the car. And that is just not that tricky really on this side. There are a few things that are a tiny bit in the way, like that, but you just move that out of the way. And see if we can get it on the studs here. There we go, I think. There we go. That is in place. And I notice now I have a little bit more cleaning to do right there, but I can do that when it's all back together. Got all my hardware here. And I like to put this together and not just snug it down first. And then I'll let the Hylimer do its stuff. I'll wipe off anything that gets pushed out. And once that is done, I can tighten everything down as tight as I want it. The one thing I do as well, which could be a little bit of overkill, but I don't want this to leak, I put a tiny smear just right here. It's not going to hurt anything, and it's just an extra precaution. Might be a little bit unnecessary, but like I said, it is so much work to get to these again. It is not something you want to do again. I'm just snugging everything down now, just not tight at all, but just so everything is snugged down and even. I work from the inside out. And now, as per instructions on the Hylimer tube, I'm going to wait a few minutes, 5 or 10 minutes or so, just to let everything sort of settle. I'll take a rag and take any excess off from on the outside of this, and then I'll tighten it all down, and then we're moving on to the next thing. So that is, of course, the intake manifolds on both sides. However, as you see, it's kind of dirty here. So I'm going to get a little brush, clean that off, get a vacuum cleaner, vacuum all this up. And while I'm in here, as I said before, I'm going to change out the spark plugs, and I highly recommend doing that because they're never going to be as easy to get to as they are right now. So I will put new spark plugs in. If you want to see how to do that with the engine completely together with no special tools, I made a video of that a couple of years ago. So I'll put a link to that down below if you want to check that out. So I'll put in the new plugs and then remove these gaskets, clean everything off, get ready for the new one, and then we'll put an intake manifold on first. I think we'll do that side first because on this side I will need to replace a fuel hose that goes underneath, which is a lot easier to replace now than to replace later. And that's it for today's video. I don't want to make it too long. I think I'm already around the 10 or 15 minute mark. So I will continue putting all the other things back off camera. None of it's really that difficult. It's just, replacing all the fuel lines I'm doing at times. It's a bit time consuming, but it's a very good time to do it. New gaskets on everything, and I will be back in the video when we fire this thing up for the first time after all of this. I'm also going to change the oil. And then in that video, we can do a quick sort of just inspection of how it runs, do a quick tune, set the throttle bodies and all that, and make sure that it's running really nicely. But anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. Leave a comment down below with what you think of how it's going so far. If you also use Highlander Blue, if it's a product that you like to use, please let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, until next time, I'm Adam, and this was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.